Welcome to QST Review number 3, June 2017. The cover is clearly a field day operation here. And in the spirit of field day, this is a very portable operations themed issue. So, first off, we'll start with Member Spotlight. The Member Spotlight for this month is KG7BQR, a Regional Emergency Communications Coordinator for FEMA. And she first learned about ham radio when she was in the Army. She learned about it from one of her commanders, AC7LR. Moving on. An extensive article on lightning protection for an amateur radio operator's home. Covers a lot of good stuff in here. You have some diagrams of the main danger zone of your home, what all is involved in getting a lightning safety system, and up here there's a nice diagram on what points you will need to be protected at. So definitely a good article by, I'm trying to figure out, by East Coast Lightning Equipment. So I was not quite as enthusiastic about the article once I realized that it was sort of a sales pitch by the Lightning Company, but it was still a awakening article, if you will. Learned a couple things. Then we had ARREDN, a high-speed data network. This was interesting. Amateur radio data network using digital repeaters. And of course, if you get QST, you read more about it. This was definitely a good article. I'm not going to get into it because it was sort of complicated, but it was a good article. And basically how the system works is there is a base station repeater or backbone repeater which transfers out to these little relay nodes, which will send out a smaller short range signal to the main operating area. And moving on, we have some field day antenna issues here. First of is the rhombic loop twofer, and this is basically a rhombic loop, but the point of this, as stated by KM6EQQ, is that by disconnecting or reconnecting the wires at the end, which he had an illustration of, let me try and find it, right here. When the wire here is shorted, this is the one corner of the diamond. When you short this, it becomes a totally different antenna than when you disconnect this. And he mentions the advantages of both different types of antennas. And then we had a 3-band dipole. It was similar to a fan dipole. He uses PVC spacers, and he just has 3 driven elements stacked on top of each other, and an RF choke made out of RG58 at the feed point. I was not very satisfied with the SWR performance, but with a tuner, it's perfectly reasonable antenna. And the bands for this, oh boy, are the standard tri-band 20, 15, and 10 meters. So, pretty simple to make. The hardest part looks like the feed point, but the actual assembly of the main antenna is not that difficult. And I usually try and skip over the product reviews, but I've got to just mention they reviewed the Yaesu FT891, which I was thrilled that they did because I very much like that radio. There's a nice big advertisement of it. Let's see, what else do we want to review here? Skipped a page. Here we go. The doctors in. What did they review here? They were talking about splicing LMR 400 with PL258 connectors. And they're talking about the loss. So, W1ZR concludes in saying there's not that much loss. At 50 megahertz, there's not terrible Oh no, I was reading the wrong section. There's not bad loss until you start getting into about the 220 megahertz range. 144 megahertz is just a little bit of loss. Everything below that, you're not going to have much loss at all for having the splice in the coax there. And then talking about, are trees going to interfere with the HF signals? And Joel says no, they're not. However, on VHF you may have a problem if you have a lot of shrubbery near you, which I do. And in the summer, when all the leaves are out, I have trouble hitting some of the farther away repeaters that I can hit in the fall just fine. Moving on, this was pretty interesting. The Outernet. I had never even heard of it until, well, just now. So there's 3 satellites streaming, I think he said 20 megabytes a second down to Earth, and you don't need much to pick it up. And I liked his humor. He said, Outernet streaming is strictly one way like broadcast radio, and the data rate is quite slow. So if you already have access to the internet, why would you want to bother with Outernet? Because you can. So that was interesting. And he's saying that getting into it with a complete setup is right about $160, and you can get parts for it at outernet.is. Moving on. Let's see what else we're going to do here. Skipped a page again. The Science of Field Day. Great article by Ward Silver. He's giving a little run through on some things you can do to tell your go-to operators a little bit about ham radio. Tell them a little bit about propagation, and use a spectrum display. If you have an SDR, show them signals across the bands and their strength on different bands at different times. Give them a little bit of radio astronomy, etc. So I really liked reading that. I'm manager of our go-to station this year, so hopefully I'm going to use this a little bit. Then we've got the Nerd Wagon, one of the NPOTA operators built this little convenient one-man mini station, and there it is in use, or a picture of it in use, I should say. Moving on to happenings. Ham radio is gaining 2 new bands. Unfortunately, a lot of you space-restricted hams aren't going to be taking much advantage of this until we start manufacturing mini antennas for it. But you've got 2,200 meter band, and you've got 630 meter band. So for those of you who can't put up a half wavelength dipole on 160 meters, hey, that's okay. Just put one up for 2,200. And put a bail in and use it on 162. Okay, so looks like we're going to get 135.7 to 137.8 kilohertz, and we can run up to, look at that, 1 watt EIRP. And then also, of course, we're talking about adding a, what was it, I believe it was 20 kilohertz section of 5 megahertz band. So 60 meters may actually become a tunable band instead of just having channels. Also, you've got a ICM, International Crystal Manufacturing, going out of business. So unfortunately, that's where I get all my crystals from, so I'm gonna have to find somewhere else. Let's see, what else do we have? Let's move on a little bit to page 95. The 6 VK9 island groups. House DX is always a great column that I like to read. And he's mentioning that each of these islands around Australia is actually a separate DXCC entity, even though they all have the Victor Kilo suffix. There's 7 different DXCC entities right around Australia that you can use. And you have a short little bit of information on each one. Turns out there's only about 1 or 2 ham operators on each island, so not a big chance of working them. But if you can, there's an extra DXCC entity. So don't skip over them just because you already got the mainland of Australia. Also, page 102. The classic radio, which is a nice little article about older radios, antennas, and microphones. I really like this microphone. I've since talked to some people using it, and it sounds absolutely marvelous. He's talking about what you need to do to repair it, and what it was like in its heyday. So you can see the newer model, which it's not actually newer, it's old now, but the older, newer model used a 9-volt battery to power the, I can't think of what it's called, but sort of the amplifier for the voice stage. And talking about that a little bit. So maybe I'll try and get one of these and fix it up. If I do, you'll have a video on it. And I really like these microphones. My uncle really likes these microphones, so hopefully I'll get one someday and be able to use it here. So that about wraps it up. After that, we hit the advertisements, and then of course for our quick stats, which I totally lost inside this advertisement hubbub, but wherever the quick stats are, I'll try and find them here. They're all field day related this month, which is not a surprise. Here they are. The subject of this poll was ARRL Field Day. So looking over it, it looks like about 21% of hams that participate in the quick stats are not going to be participating in Field Day. It also looks like only 21% of hams that are participating in Field Day based on the poll are going to be attempting a satellite bonus contact. So if you're going to be attempting one, let me know in the comments below. Our club will be trying to do it. We attempted last year but missed all the passes. The satellite operator went home, took a nap, and when he came back the passes were almost done, so we missed him last year. But we'll try again this year. He's got a new antenna designed, and I am going to put a video of our field day. Hopefully that will be in there. So definitely watch for that towards the end of the month. And then 39% of hams will also be trying digital modes, so a little bit better, but still not even 50%. We are not going to be trying digital modes. We have a digital setup, but it's not going to be our main station or anything. Our main is going to be a phone. We'll do a little bit of CW on the side, and after that it'll probably be a very, very small amount of digital with a couple satellite contacts. So there you have it. That is this month's QST review. If I missed something you want a review on, let me know, and I'll try and get that to you. So 73's God bless. We'll catch you in the next video.